All right, we are rolling. We are rolling, and I am here now with Jeff Olsen. And oh my gosh, Jeff, honestly, I am always so stoked to talk to you. And I've been so privileged to know you for the last, like, really, it's just been like a little over a year or so that we met. But your name has been kind of like floating around in like different circles of people I've been hanging out with, and I've always wanted to talk to you more. Am I making you blush yet, or no?
A little bit, just a
let,
little bit.
let me keep going a little bit more and you'll be blushing big time. So in case you all don't know, Jeff Olsen is an author, a speaker, and he's currently the creative director at BYU TV. But the thing that I don't know, like I've always have fancied like learning about things of a spiritual nature. I've really enjoyed it. I think it's very important, and I'm always like seeking after truths and learning different things, and and part of this journey, and part of like trying to figure out my life's purpose. I've read tons and tons of of experiences that people have had when they've passed away and come back, and like what messages they've received. I've read a lot of them, but I haven't really met too many people that have had near-death experiences before until I met Jeff. And Jeff has had an incredible story, so I'm going to let him really share that story. But also, I'm very excited because not only has Jeff learned incredible lessons, but I don't know, every time I talk to you, I always hear like just new things for myself. So yeah, Jeff, why don't we just kind of start off, and you can kind of talk a little bit about your experience.
That's awesome.
There.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's an honor for me to call you friend. It really is. And we have had some
Yeah,
really good conversations. And I'll be brief because I would rather have a dialogue than a monologue, quite honestly.
sure.
But I know, yeah, you referred to me as an author and speaker, and I am an author. I authored Knowing.
Mm,
And it is a very personal memoir. It tells about life, death, and everything in between. It kind of covers my life in a way, but the pinnacle of that is a automobile accident wherein my wife, my youngest son were killed instantly in the accident. Me and my oldest son, who was 7 at the time, survived. But for all intents and purposes, the accident took my life as well. And yet, I say it took my life. What I learned is none of us ever die. I mean, I left my body. I ascended from the scene of the accident. And even though it took almost, over 5 months of hospitalization and 18 surgeries before I was ever well, it was quite an ordeal. So I left the body and came back, but I was very much alive when out of the body. In fact, maybe even more so than when we're in it. To me, that
yeah.
is what's real. This is the crazy dream.
So yeah, that's such an interesting concept to think that the life that we're living right now almost is like a dream compared to the life beyond. Um, and I've always wanted to believe that, and it rings true to me. But you said were you conscious when your spirit left your body?
Yeah, very, very much so. The accident was a single car rollover.
Okay.
And I blacked out, for the actual rolling.
Yeah.
They say the car probably rolled 6 or 8 times.
Mm,
But yeah, I was completely conscious. In fact, it was a horrific scene.
mm,
I knew my wife was gone. She was sitting next to me in the passenger seat. What had happened to my youngest son is the car seat had broken apart and he had been
oh,
ejected from the vehicle.
it's so sad. Yeah.
And I was aware of that. And I was pinned. I couldn't move. I was pinned and I couldn't even tell whether it was the floorboard or the seat. It was a horrific scene, but I knew my 7-year-old son was okay because he was in the back seat crying.
Mm,
But yeah, I was very conscious, and I don't share that to be graphic or morbid, but that was the setting. And I'm like, I've got to get to my son. I've got to get to my son. But I realized I could not move. I knew half the family was gone. And it was that point that light, I, light came to me. Light came and just seemed to encircle me and
Mm.
comfort me. And it felt as if I was rising above the scene of the accident. And it was a little confusing. I was like, wow, what's going on? And suddenly there was no more pain. I could breathe. I mean, what had happened in the accident is both of my legs had been crushed and shattered. In fact, my left leg was amputated above the knee.
Mm.
My back had been broken. My rib cage had been damaged and my lungs were collapsing, so I couldn't breathe. My right arm had almost been torn off, and then the seatbelt had cut through and ruptured all my intestines. I didn't know any of that. I just knew my son was crying. I wanted to get to him. I couldn't move. I was losing consciousness.
Yeah.
The most horrific part was I knew that Tamara and Griffin, my wife and youngest son, were gone.
Yeah.
But then suddenly there was this delivery, this incredible exit of the body, if you will, which seemed to deliver me from that whole horrible scene.
Okay. So you left and you felt yourself floating. Did you go to a specific place? Did you look at your surroundings from outside of the car, or how did that
Well,
travel?
it was really interesting because as I felt myself rising above the car, I was a little confused. I'm like, what's happening?
Yeah.
And then suddenly I could breathe. Oh, I'm okay. I'm okay. And I was a little confused that I was okay. And it's not that I felt myself go to a place necessarily in that instance, but I did feel as if I was surrounded in this comforting, tangible light.
Yeah.
And then the crazy thing about it is that as I was there in that light, Tamara, my wife, who I knew was deceased at the scene, suddenly she was there with me.
Yeah.
And yet she was alive and well, and we were communicating. We literally were having the conversation about me leaving that realm and coming back. You know, she was like, you can't be here. You've got to go back.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
and I did make the choice to come back so I could raise our 7-year-old son at the time and be his father. But it wasn't an easy journey.
Yeah. Well, did you you're talking about this realm of light, and you said it was almost tangible, right? How long would you say you were in that space for?
I really have no concept of time
Sure.
in that space, but I mean, what had happened is people arrived at the scene of the accident. You know, they got emergency services. My body had to be extricated from the car. They rushed me and my oldest son to a little local hospital, which the extent of my injuries, they knew they could do nothing for me. My oldest son was actually, he was banged up a little bit, but he basically walked away from the scene. That was not true of me. In fact, they immediately life flighted me
Okay.
to a level 1 trauma center in Salt Lake City. So I don't know, how many minutes or hours that was,
Yeah.
but I was unaware of any of that. I knew I had crashed the car.
Mhm.
I went into this other realm and said the most profound goodbye I would ever say, and I actually returned to find my body in the level 1 trauma center in
Huh.
Salt Lake City. And yet when I say returned, all I knew was I was making the choice to come back. I had been delivered from the accident scene
Yeah.
by this light. I had said the most profound goodbye I'd ever say. And when I made the conscious choice on going back, that's when I found myself wandering around a level 1 trauma center, if you
Mm.
will. And yet I was out of the body because and that was an incredible experience. I mean,
Yeah. What was that like? Did you were you able to go through walls, or have a sense of knowing that that was different than the way you would understand things in your body?
yes, the most profound part of it was the people I saw, which it was a busy level 1 trauma center. There was doctors and nurses and patients and the families of the patients. And I seemed to be just freely moving about the hallways and the rooms.
Yeah.
Um, and yet everyone I encountered, um, I knew them perfectly. I mean, I knew their love, their hate, their joy, their motivations, their
Yeah.
guilt. I knew everything about them as if they were me. There was this incredible
Mm,
connectedness, and that was coupled with this profound love, profound connection and love for everyone. It didn't matter who they were or what they had done or what they hadn't done. There was this incredible unconditional love for
mm,
everyone I encountered, until I came to this body or this man laying on the gurney that I didn't feel anything from, which I thought was strange. But that's when I realized, oh, that's me.
mm.
But it wasn't me. I was having this incredible, connected, profound experience, but that was my body. That was the skin suit that I'd been experiencing my life in.
That's so interesting. So it almost seems like the body's just like a vehicle, like a car, and you can get out of the car, and when you get out of the car is not you. It's not you, you know, but it's the vehicle in which you experience the roads, you know, and go on a journey or whatnot. But you can get out of the car, and that is you, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
It was
I
interesting,
go ahead, yeah,
standing over my body. When I realized, oh my goodness, that's me. I
yeah,
mean, that's my body.
yeah,
There was this profound sadness because I was so messed up. My body was so banged up.
yeah,
But there was also this intense gratitude. I had taken my body for granted my whole life.
yeah,
I mean, I didn't realize that my eyes just knew how to see and my feet knew how to walk, and that everything was filled with intelligence and light. Like every cell of my body was. And
yeah.
yet here I was looking at it thinking, wow, I never realized that. I took that for granted. But I also knew I had to get back into this broken body that would never be the same. I mean, I had extensive injuries, and
Yeah,
although I've healed relatively way, I mean, I used to be a Division I athlete, and I was not going to be running around anymore with
right.
one leg and one knee that didn't work, and shoulders that were all jacked up, and a back that wasn't quite right.
Yeah.
So I became very acutely aware of the miracle that is our body,
Mm.
and returning to it.
You know, that is so that's so fascinating and amazing. Like you're right. Like we blink like unconsciously. Like I mean, we don't recognize like, oh yeah, we just blinked. And it's like our body's way of saying, hey, you need to water your eyes, you know,
Yeah.
or uh, breathing, for instance. I'm not consciously aware of my breath, but I know I breathe every day. Walking, moving my hands, doing whatever I want to do requires no thought.
Right.
Requires no thought. If I want to do it, I just do it.
Yeah,
Um,
your heart will beat
yeah,
on and on and on. I don't know how many millions of beats in a lifetime, and you don't have to tell it to. You don't have to
no,
remind it to. Your lungs will breathe. Your eyes will see.
yeah,
And yet, I mean, I say those things. I realize there's a lot of people that have what we call handicaps. I have a beautiful friend who is blind,
mhm.
and yet she sees more than the rest of us see.
Yeah,
She
yeah,
she's incredibly intuitive, and her other senses have been enhanced, but I think her spiritual knowing has been enhanced based on the fact that she doesn't see. So
yeah.
even with that, but yeah, the body, in its functions, is a pretty amazing machine.
Machine. You know, I kind of want to go talk a little bit about. You were saying that there was this level of like, I don't know, for a lack of a better word, like a oneness, like an interconnectedness when you were in that spirit form, and it was something you just were keenly aware of, right? Where it wasn't that you were separate from other people. You knew other people, you knew their challenges, you knew their trials, you understood them perfectly, and you loved them perfectly. There was no sense of judgment.
Right.
Um, and yet, when we're back in our body, we have all those things. You know, we count ourselves separate from another person. This is me, that's you. You know, and I need to do this. You need to do that. There's levels of judgment. There's levels of fear. why do you think that is? Why do you think there's that huge separation between our spirit self and when we're in our body?
Yeah. That's a fantastic question, and I actually had some interesting insights. I mean, going back into the hospital when I felt this connectedness.
Yeah.
I grew up in a Christian home. We grew up reading biblical verse, and as I was having this experience, a verse came to me, which was the famous verse that said, inasmuch as you've done it to the least of these, you've done it unto me. And I had grown up believing that was a beautiful verse about being nice and being kind. But
Yeah.
what I was experiencing when you said oneness, that's the perfect word. That was this oneness.
Hmm.
And I had this acute awareness of what the master was speaking of when he talked about that. When I was hungry, you fed me. When I was in prison, you visited me. When I was naked, you clothed me. And they all said, when did we do that? Well, if you did it to the least of them, you did it to me, which, like I say, I thought was about being kind. But what I was realizing in this experience was I am them and they are me. And there was this whole new depth that here this fellow we call Jesus, he realized he was the man in prison. He was the beggar on the street. He was the homeless, naked. I mean, it's like there was this absolute oneness that was so profound. And as you said, judgments and comparisons just went out the window because there was this intense love. Now, that was when I was out of the body. That's when I was seeing things in a way that, in fact, I knew I was seeing it as God sees it. I mean, it was very, very intense and beautiful. And yet somehow we, while in the body, have this experience of duality. It's like, well, I'm separate. That is me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the crazy thing is everything really teaches us of that. I mean, I could go on and on. I mean, even as little kids, well, your name is, Jeff, and live here, and you have, this is your desk or your work or your lunch, and everything is separate.
And
Everything pushes, everything pushes us and them, even in our adult lives. Well, you know, they're one political party, they're another. They're female, you're male. They're
yeah.
black or brown, and you're white. And what I mean, everything seems to do this separateness when the reality is none of that matters. We're all connected. We're all one, and it's in our diversity and in our uniqueness that the perfection is found, not in that
Yeah.
judgment and comparison of who's right and who's wrong.
Right. Well, okay, so and these are things I honestly these are things that I'm thinking about. I don't know answers to or anything like that. So um I'd love to get your insights on it. But the idea of divinity, that we're all divine beings. Um I really believe that like Jesus was trying to teach us when he's praying that we're one, that like we are like him, and we need to awaken to that. And I don't mean to sound like sacrilegious. I believe that he is the son of God, in the sense that he performed the atonement. Like those are some of the beliefs that I have for myself. But I also believe that whenever I've come to him and learned from him and called him my master, one of the first things he does to me is give me more power. And he tries to help me realize, Charan, like you are infinitely powerful. Like you need to wake up to that. And sometimes I have a hard time grasping that concept, or owning that concept, if that makes sense. um and so something I have to like keep working on, and keep working on. And I think that's something that everyone has to keep working on all their lives.
Yeah.
But I guess, without again sounding sacrilegious or whatnot, like what is your concept of us being divine beings? Like what did you learn from that whole experience?
Oh, I learned a lot, and I could expound on that for hours probably. I mean, this hospital thing was not the end of my experiences in the
Oh,
other
okay.
realm.
Yeah.
I was in the hospital, like I say, for 5 months. I seemed to have one foot in this realm and one foot in the next. I would come and go.
Oh,
At
interesting.
one point, at one point I did go back into that realm, and the light that surrounded me, or that was the vehicle to take me there, dispensed. And I found myself in an incredibly beautiful place.
Mm.
And it was home. It was home. That's the only word I could put to it, is I was home. And I actually encountered my little toddler son, Griffin. I was able to hold him, and that was tangible. But as I held him, um, this intense presence came up behind me and held us. And as we were held, then we became one. I mean, it was literally as if
Huh.
not only was I being held by God, I became God, as did my son. It was like suddenly I was part of all of it, and it was part of me. And there was a huge download about our divinity, about my connection to the Creator. And if it was my connection, then all of us. I mean, it was interesting because as I held my little boy, who
Yeah.
was perfect to me, who was absolutely, and sure, he was just barely learning to walk. He couldn't talk. He was slobbering, you know how big babies are, they're in diapers. But to me, he was perfect. And I
Yeah.
had this very real sense that in the arms of my father, I was perfect, just like he was perfect. And that this whole thing expanded to where we have all these judgments and comparisons, but our divine parents are like, look at our children, they're learning to walk. And there was this huge download about divinity. In fact, I knew in that instance that I was divine, and that I was part of that, and that was part of me. And that whole I am that I am,
Yeah.
was resonating from me. It's like, oh, I am that I am. Like we're all this. And when you step back in to what Jesus taught, and this has been taught by many, many masters, but it's just what you said. The message was so simple. He taught our divinity. I mean, in John 17, when he said, Father, the glory you've given me, I've given them. Before the world was, you gave it to me, I've given it to them, that we all will be one. I
Mm.
mean, every parable he told was about equality, about absolute unconditional love. There was two debtors, one owed 50, one owed 500. At the end of the day, when they could pay nothing, they were freely forgiven. The vineyard, some worked all day, some worked the last hour. At the end of the day, they were all paid the same wage. The prodigal son, on and on and on. The stories are of equality, of unconditional love, of unity. And not only did he teach it in his great intercessory prayer, that they all might be one, I and them, and you and me, and we are all one. But even in the things he taught, I mean, Peter, walk on the water. Why do you doubt? You're no different than me. Do the things you see me do. He said that. Come, follow me. Do these things.
Yeah.
Even at the very end, when it was his closest friend said, well, show us this Father you talk about. Show us the Father, and then we'll believe you.
Yeah.
And his answer was quite profound, where he said, guys, have I been with you so long?
Yeah.
If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Why do you ask such silly questions? And this is what I know he was saying.
Yeah.
He was saying, I am a divine manifestation of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so are you. So are you. This is why he said, walk on the water, do the things, greater things you'll do than me.
Yeah.
If you just believe and know and trust and realize that I'm not here to thumb my nose and say, hey, I'm better than you. I'm dad's favorite.
Yeah.
I'm here to hold up a mirror to show you your divinity through me having claimed my own divinity. And that, to me has become so profoundly simple and yet so powerful in everything he did and everything he taught, that it has literally shifted things for me in immense ways.
Yeah. Man, I mean, it's just interesting because it's like there's so many, there's so many like Buddhist philosophies that talk about the idea of having no thought, no mind as they call it, right? And they kind of, you connect to that inner stillness and you realize your consciousness expands and you become pure awareness. So there's tremendous amount of truths to that. Then there's the concept of Jesus, and he is the savior and everything. So sometimes I'm like, how do you merge the two together? But I guess the interesting thing is truth encompasses everything, you know? And like for me, um, a lot of my joy comes because of what I feel is my personal connection to Jesus. I've just had like spiritual experiences. I can't deny them, and they make me happy. You know, they make me happy, and it's a lot different than saying, "Hey, I'm gonna have a positive attitude today. I'm gonna think positive thoughts." It's more like this is like a spring coming out of me, a spring of joy just coming out of me, and I can't help but shine. Like when I have like my experiences, when I connect and when I feel that oneness, it's like I have like this immense power flowing out of me. But same token, if for whatever reason I get too distracted, which I think is my big problem, is I get too distracted in life, and I don't connect. I don't take the time to meditate or pray or whatnot, and I go throughout my day and do whatever. I find that I'm like uh, my light starts diminishing. I get a little bit more exhausted. I get more. I mean, I never really get angry, but I get really scattered and really like what's it called? Like just not able to focus, I suppose. I'm not able to be present. But I think that connection to God, divinity, everything, when I can actively do that, the byproduct of that is I'm already present, is I'm just present, and I'm engaged in the now where I truly exist. Um, so I don't know if that makes sense, but
It makes perfect sense to me.
yeah,
You know, there is this thread of truth that runs through everything.
yeah,
There is universal truth. I mean, in many ways, Jesus was teaching Buddhism. And
yeah,
yet you can look at any of the masters, as I call them, whether that's Jesus or Muhammad or Buddha or Krishna.
hmm,
The theme was love. The theme was unconditional love,
yeah,
and which starts with me and within me. Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, if I don't love myself, how can I possibly love my neighbor? I can only give what I have, and you know these things are profound. I mean, even Rumi would have said, "Well, I am in the universe, and the universe is within me." And yet, Jesus was saying the same thing. The kingdom of God is within you. There's these universal things which are about enlightenment. They are about awakening, and they are about self-realization
yeah,
that you're a master and I'm a master. And we have these beautiful examples of what a master does and how a master lives. And yet they live in love. They live
uh,
in love and in service. And we always box it up into religion. I,
sure,
I had an incredible dream once upon a time, and I do dream dreams,
okay,
but I was shown in a dream, and this was interesting because I and they're lucid dreams sometimes. I say dreams, I ought to just say I had a vision, because
right,
that's what it was. I'll never forget this dream. I awoke from it with absolute clarity. I'll never forget it. But in the dream, I was shown Gandhi,
okay,
a Hindu man. I knew very little of Gandhi except what I had studied in school, which was not a lot.
hmm,
But I saw Gandhi's life. And the interesting thing is, I got to feel how Gandhi felt about his religion, about his traditions, about his ceremonies and his practices, and about his people. It was a very intense, engaged dream where I experienced Gandhi and I experienced his feelings and his emotions. And then I was shown another person. I was shown Mother Teresa,
mm,
a Catholic Christian nun, but I got to feel how she felt about her beliefs,
wow,
her ceremonies, her rituals, her traditions, and yet I got to feel how she loved the people that she served. It was a very intense dream. And then I was shown a third in the dream, which was Jesus. And
okay,
as a Christian myself, I'm like, oh my goodness, there's the Son of God. I mean, that was, this resonated in a way, but what I was shown in the dream, which I found very interesting, I was shown his Jewishness. I
oh,
was shown
okay.
Jesus as a practicing Jewish man
Yeah,
but I got to feel, just like Gandhi or Mother Teresa, what his rituals and his ceremonies meant to him. why he did them, how his mother taught him the traditions of the Hindu people and
Yeah.
Hebrew people. And I just thought, gosh, I mean, here I was witnessing and experiencing Gandhi, a Hindu,
Yeah.
Mother Teresa, a Christian,
Yeah.
and Jesus as a Jewish person.
Yeah.
And yet in the vision, I was told religion has nothing to do with any of it. It was not their religion that gave them power. It was their willingness to serve and their connection to that divine creator, which taught them love and love unconditional
Yeah.
in many things. And I've talked about that dream a little bit, but to see, the diversity in their beliefs and yet the uniform, the unity in their ability to love was um, quite an experience.
Man, that's awesome. And yeah, it's so great that you were able to experience it the way those people experienced it, and again, goes back to that oneness, right? Goes back to that connectivity, that oneness, that person is you and you are that person.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think, uh, so just a couple more questions. What do you think about the idea of like, in of prophecy, I'd say, because like even in like in Christianity and Hinduism and in different religions, they have different prophets that prophesy about future events. Here's the deal. I have not been given any sort of spiritual gift that lets me know like what the future is, because for me, it's like I can never predict what happens. It's almost like a jumbling mess. I've learned to be happy in the uncertainty, which has been great because we are living in very, very, very uncertain times right now. But what do you think about like the idea of like future events coming to pass, and like how do you deal with that type of stuff? You know?
Um, it's interesting because there are many prophecies in many cultures. I'm incredibly connected lately, at least over the last decade, with Native American prophecy.
Oh, okay, yeah, I'd love
Black,
to know more.
Black Elk speaks, and the things on this continent and with the indigenous people here in the United States where I live, or in North America,
Hmm.
um, mixed in with all the religious prophecies that come from all different walks of life. And
Yeah.
here's the thing to me, and this is how I deal with it. I don't know what's going to happen 10 minutes from now. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And the history of the prophecies or the things that have happened, it often breaks my heart what humanity has done to humanity in the sake of being right, to stomp out a culture or to stop a people. It's horrific what we've done in the past, but the past is also gone. I mean, we can learn from it. We can look at it, but I've really made a commitment to live in the now, to live in the beautiful moment of now, because
Yeah.
the past is gone. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but if I can be present in the right now
Yes.
and realize that there's always a choice. I am an eternal being without beginning or end, as are you and all of us here. But in every single moment, I have a choice. In fact, eternity is nothing more or less to me than always having right now.
Yeah.
And right now, I can choose how to react in any given circumstance. I mean, and even when we talk about why do we come and get into this duality? Why in the body are we judgmental or have these struggles? I really feel that we came to experience what we're not in this duality, that we might fully embrace what we
Wait,
are.
I like
And
that. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
yeah, we're divine, eternal beings, but we come into this duality where there's today, tomorrow, and yesterday, and that next moment, and you're there, and I'm here, and we experience this duality, this separateness,
Yeah.
almost like a game. Will we ever stop? Will we ever become one? Will we ever let go of fear and lean into love? And I believe if we do, we'll literally create heaven right here. There'll be nowhere to go or nothing. I mean, we'll literally create heaven right here. We'll say, wow, look, we did it.
Yeah.
We've created all those things we dream of in any religion. It's like, well, when we get there, it'll be better. It's like, no, let's make it better here,
Right.
now.
Yeah.
That's again what a master like Jesus was saying. Thy kingdom come, thy earth be done on earth
Yeah.
as it is in heaven. Thy will be done here, not there or somewhere else. Let's bring all that love here and see what we can create as divine eternal beings.
So let me ask you this. We're living in a weird time right now, right? We're like
Yeah.
all in quarantine. No one expected that 2020 would be like this. And there's a lot of people that are in fear. They're living in fear. They are living in survival mode. And they're trying to figure out where to go next. How do we find the divinity in all of that? Like, what do we do? What do we do individually to find the purpose, the divinity, the plan in all of that?
Well, here I go again. Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow.
Mm,
They don't spin, they don't toil, and yet they're greater than the greatest king you've ever known. It's a choice. That's the beautiful thing. It's a choice. We could choose to live in fear,
sure.
panic, and quite honestly, the panic scares me far more than the virus
Oh
does.
yeah, man. It's that the panic is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fear. It's fear, and yet to me, there's two great powers in the universe. There's fear, and there's love, and both are great motivators. But if we can choose love, I was sitting out a little earlier today. I finished my work day, and I'm working from home, but I finished all my Zoom calls, and I
Yeah.
went through all my emails, and I had a minute before you and I connected. I just wanted to go outside,
Yeah.
and the buds on the trees, the leaves are pushing through, and the birds were all singing and eating from the little bird feeder, and the clouds were drifting over the mountain, and the sun was casting this beautiful golden glow on the snow-capped, Mount Timpanogos. And I breathed in the fresh air, and I thought, gosh, there's peace. Nature doesn't seem to be concerned at all. Now, yes, it's a virus. It's dangerous. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Stay our distance. But to me, the divine part of that is maybe by being forced to be separate, we might actually begin to embrace oneness. We
Yeah.
might hug or shake hands or embrace differently when we're able to come together. Once again, to experience what we're not, we might fully appreciate what we are.
Yeah.
And there'll be much good come from this. We'll clean things up. We'll live differently. It's been so interesting to work differently and to be still and to be at home and to be quiet and to be at peace.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's a choice. We can choose panic and fear, and we can
Sure.
pull toilet paper and everything else we want, or
Yeah.
we can choose love, and love always wins. Love always has an answer, and once again, loving ourselves. Yeah, be good to yourself. Keep yourself clean. Keep yourself safe, and watch what happens. And it all has a natural course. It's like I grew up as a dairy farmer and rancher. We had cows and animals, and we had to grow hay, but
Yeah.
it's herd immunity. We'll get the virus. It's here, but our bodies are so incredibly powerful. They're so miraculous. I was reading the statistics today. We have a 98.5 cure rate or healing rate in the United States for COVID-19. In other words, even if I get the virus, there's a 98.5 chance that I will be just fine. In fact, 80% of the people that get it don't even need treatment. The body knows how to defend. There's intelligence in every single cell that knows how to defend, how to rejuvenate, how to fight off, how to adapt and become immune to the virus. And unfortunately, yeah, some people have passed. I already lost a friend and neighbor to COVID-19
Yeah.
already. And it's like, wow. But from my perspective, no one ever dies. It doesn't take the pain and grief out of losing a loved one. But we graduate from this life. We move on, and it's all in divine order. I had a little boy die at 14 months. That doesn't seem fair or right or good or true. But I'll tell you what,
Mm.
everything is in divine order. That's what I learned in those places on the other realm as I held him and as God held me, and I saw the whole plan
Yeah.
for me. my personal life plan. And that little boy, who is my biggest guardian angel now, he loved me enough to go. He said, Dad, I'll come and I'll break your heart in ways you can't even imagine, because I'm that advanced. I can move on and go to the next realm, but I will watch over you and look after you as you learn, as you grow in ways you can't imagine either,
Mm.
because I love you that much. That's unconditional love. And I couldn't say that, you know, I mean, I grieved bitterly. I mean, you know, the accident was over 20 years ago. I grieved for a decade. But I'll
Yeah.
tell you what, those angels, those loved ones are what got me through it, because they're never really gone. They're
Yeah.
with us and they watch over us and they cheer us on as we continue to fall on our face and slobber and learn to walk here, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, as you're speaking and as you're saying all these things, it just reaffirms something that I believe, which is that every single person matters and every single person has their own divine plan specifically engineered for them, you know, and that we should never count ourselves as like, oh, God doesn't love me or anything like that, because it's like, I just feel like every single person has such a beautifully specific plan that's just made for them to experience the greatest amount of joy, you know. And and I don't know, I hope that we can all personally feel that and figure out how to become aware of that plan for ourselves.
Yeah.
um,
I, boy, I asked a lot of why early on in the accident, laying in that hospital bed for endless months. My legs were immobile. My arm was immobile. They tied down my left hand because I kept grabbing at all the
yeah,
medical equipment. I was intubated and had a big wrist, you know, a
yeah,
big tube down my throat. And I would ask why me, why this, why, and it wasn't until I shifted to the what questions. What am I learning?
mm,
What am I learning? And I often refer to Jesus, who I do call my master. You know, for this cause came I into the world. You know, that's why I'm here, was to experience all of that and to overcome that, that I might have the expansion of my soul, you know, that I might know by my own experience um, how brave I really am. And all of us go through it. We all get our turn. And yet it's love. I look at it, whether it's a virus or whether it's the joyful parts of my life, it is all love.
yeah,
It all comes from light. It's so that we can come and live our life and make our choices. There is always free will and choice. I think that's the only rule in the whole universe, is you have free will. You get to
yeah,
choose,
yeah,
and then you'll experience the results of your choices, and therefore your soul will know. And there's a beautiful ceremony which has very indigenous and native roots, but it's about going back into the garden and partaking of the tree of life, which
interesting,
is
yeah,
the love of God, you know. And this is the tree of life is in all many cultures, many religions.
sure,
But the beautiful thing about that is in the ceremonies I'm familiar with. Um, you go back in and partake of the tree of life, which is the love of God. And there's only one question. It's like, what did you learn? What
mm,
did you learn in your experience? What did you learn being you
mm-hmm,
in life? And, you know, as we go through this whole COVID-19 and, you know, this coronavirus pandemic, it's a pandemic now officially. Um, you know, we can ask that. What is the virus teaching me about me? What's it teaching me about humanity? What's it teaching me about life and death and value and kindness and goodness? I mean, I often have people say, "How do I want to have I want to have a spiritual experience." In fact, they'll say, "I want to have a near-death experience." I'll say, "No, you don't. You don't. You don't want to do that." But I'll tell you, you can have a spiritual experience by doing one simple thing:
mm,
just getting in a quiet place and asking, whether you believe in a greater power or whether you just ask your own heart, "What can I do for someone else today?"
I like that.
And immediately you'll have an image. And, you know, during this whole quarantine, it might be, I'm going to call mom. Or it
Yeah.
might be, what can I do for someone else? Well, I can stay home and stay clean. Or maybe I can call up and have a pizza ordered and delivered, to the neighbor next door and just say, hey, I just know I love you. It's okay. I mean, it's in those little simple things that the big things are found. Those are the big things in life, as far as I'm concerned.
Even this idea of like interviewing you and like this whole idea of doing like this series, it was just the other day. It was just 2 days ago actually, where I was like, man, what can I do to share some light in the world? Because normally I audition for stuff. I'm an actor. I go do all those things, and right now all those things are shut down. And so I was doing like little sketches and videos and just fun, goofy stuff. But just as I was thinking about that, this just came to me so clearly. It just came in my mind. I'm like, of course, why don't I do this? Like. And I mean, more than ever, like I feel like I'm learning. I'm getting so much from it, and but I genuinely hope that other people can get stuff as well. But man,
I love your question,
yeah,
Sharon.
I
What can I do to be a light in the
yeah,
world? That's another thing that we often misconstrue. It's another example of Jesus and what he taught. We all say, well, he's the light of the world.
yeah,
He said, you're the light of the world.
yeah,
Why would you hide under a bushel or a basket? What would you
yeah,
shine? Put it out there. And you're doing that, my brother, by just doing these little interviews
yeah.
and just by who you are and what you bring. You are a very bright light in this world, and I love the fact that you're doing this.
Well, Jeff, you're so great. I honestly, I wish we had hours, because I know I could just sit and sup at your feet and just and
Don't
learn.
do that. I've only got 1 foot, so it
Don't
doesn't.
worry. I'm gonna sup at. I'll sup at your foot then. Which you can choose what foot to sup at. But no, I really appreciate you taking the time, because and I knew it was gonna be a treat. I knew when you said yes, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is gonna be so great, because you have such a beautiful perspective from things that you've gone through, which I know has caused so much pain, and I would never wish it on anyone. But yet, through that pain, you were able to learn something so profound that is so integrated into your being. Like, it's not something you have to think about. It's something you completely know, and now you can share that with the world and give others hope. And
Yeah, I only know what I know by experience. That's the gift of life,
yeah,
is we learn from our experiences,
yeah,
yeah, we're here to learn, and we do. We certainly do, and
yeah,
everything is a teacher, everything is a gift. That's what's really shifted for me. Is I used to live in fear. I was afraid life was a test. I was afraid God was going to judge me, and I was certainly afraid that I was failing at it all.
right,
But I'll tell you, based on what I've experienced, what I know is life is an absolute gift. And every single day is a divine, beautiful gift. In fact, every moment is a gift if we embrace it that way. And
yeah,
this whole idea of free will, every moment I get to make a choice, not only about who I am, but about who you are. And if I decide we have far more in common than we do apart, that's separate, and I can be one, even over a Zoom call. We're at least 6 feet apart, if not far more.
dude, yeah, probably.
But, uh, but the reality is we're not apart at all. We're connected heart to heart, and we are one. And we'll get through this together, even if we're not in the same room.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time, for chatting, for being vulnerable and sharing your insights, because I really feel like it can do a lot of good and hopefully give people some really deep perspective. So
Well,
thank
it's
you.
an honor, my friend. It's
Yeah.
an honor. I'm honored you asked, and I'm happy to spend some time with you any day.
Oh, dude, you're the best. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All
And
right, brother. We'll
okay,
see you
we'll
soon.
talk soon. Okay.
All righty.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.